Today to come and join us for this this webinar that we're running today, which is called How Hackers Really Break In and What You Can Do to Stop Them. This is very much a partnership webinar. We work with a brilliant cybersecurity company called DigitalXRAID. We've got Callum on the call. Callum's got his nice big red X background, so you can clearly see that it's him and not me. And I'm going to defer to the experts on this one, so it is going to be very much the Callum show for a bit. I think I'm going to rejoin you all again at the end just to talk you through kind of how we work with DigitalXRAID and give you a bit of an example of some of the client work that we're doing with them. But Callum, if it's all right with you, I will pass over to you, let you share your screen, and then you can run the show.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I'm just going to bring up my presentation, which Laura sent over, didn't she? Bring it up onto the right screen. Sorry, guys. The problem is I've got 3 screens. So as soon as you start a presentation, it goes onto every screen. So let me just share the correct one. And I'll bring this over here. Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone. So my name's Callum, and I'm the Director of Security Testing and Innovation at DigitalXRAID. So today I want to share with you what we see from our position as a penetration testing team, what's actually happening in the industry, and how attackers are getting in. So, and most importantly, what you can do about it in a way that's practical and kind of more realistic for your business. So talking quite a few different things today. I promise you it's not going to be overly heavily technical. You won't need to know lots of things about firewalls or necessarily network architectures, so hopefully nice and easy to understand. So every year, Verizon, who are one of the kind of the largest telecom companies you may have heard of, publish what's called the Data Breach Investigations Report. So it's considered to be one of the standards for understanding what's actually happening more in cybercrime globally. So this year they've analysed over 30,000 real-world security instances. So, and more than 10,000 of those were confirmed as actual data breaches. So I've put some statistics up on here just so you can see it. So at the same time, IBM, also another big company, published its cost of data breach report. And the headline figures this year are quite concerning. So the average cost of a single data breach is now about $4.88 million or £3.65 million, converting it. So it's about 10% increase and jump from the year before, and probably one of the largest single year increases since obviously the pandemic of COVID. So this really kind of starts to go to show kind of how real the threat really is, and the fact that it's growing year on year, and obviously affecting businesses of every size and every sector. It's not just one environment, one kind of area that's being affected. Attackers will go after absolutely anyone because data is the goal. So I'm just going to walk you through 4 main ways attackers are getting in right now. So the first is obviously, as you can see, social engineering. So this is where an attacker will send obviously a convincing email, which is obviously now made a lot more important and a lot more trickier, especially with the introduction of artificial intelligence. Crafting these emails, you don't get that common spelling mistakes. People are starting to use them a lot more. They're becoming a lot more convincing. So they're obviously designed to trick and convince someone into clicking a link, either handing over their password, where you get redirected to something like a Microsoft login page, or transferring money. I'm sure many of you have come across instances where people are trying to scam people, family, friends. So, and according to Verizon's data, once someone opens up a phishing email, the average time before they click the malicious link is just 21 seconds. So in less than half a minute, an attacker could be distributing malware or be inside the business or start to really cause some problems. So the second is stolen credentials. So usernames, passwords, one of the best ways to get in, very popular. There's lots of resources online, lots of public resources. Have I Been Pwned is a fantastic one that a lot of people will use. So involved in about 24% of all breaches. The kind of most concerning thing is obviously it's really cheap. So as you can see here, it can cost very little as £8. It's actually cheaper than coffee, but still really valuable. And login credentials could be used in any kind of way, getting access to sensitive applications, your Microsoft account, if you're not protecting yourself with MFA, and then they can start causing, again, more problems by getting into the system, and it looks legitimate as well. If that account is active, if you've got a SOC there preventing you, they're not going to see it. They're going to see it as an authentication, successful login, and it's probably going to go unnoticed at that point. So obviously, good, strong password policies there. The third, unpatched vulnerabilities. So every piece of software, every application, every system has its own weaknesses. So when software companies discover those weaknesses, they release patches to fix them. But attackers, they're constantly scanning for systems that haven't been updated. You can do that through a phrase called Google dorking if you want to be really kind of get a bit more technical. But in just 2024, so a couple of years ago, the exploitation of known vulnerabilities as an entry point grew by 180% compared to the previous year. So more than half of those known vulnerabilities are still unpatched after 55 days, and that's a 55-day window where attackers can obviously get straight in and through the door. And fourth and finally, so ransomware. So this is where attackers get into your system, encrypt all of your data. Now that could be through one of the other means, stolen credentials, unpatched systems, phishing. And what they then start to do is start to demand ransoms to get your information back. So again, go back a few years, just obviously after COVID, ransomware was involved in 32% of all breaches. So affecting 92% of industries. That means almost, obviously, no sector is exempt. We've seen it across various industries, financial, agricultural, everyone. So the idea, again, then is just obviously financially driven. So the average price, I think, has increased to around 36,000, as you can see from the slides. But then it's not just that anymore. It's obviously the downtime, it's the rebuilding of networks, and it's obviously the risk of reputational damage as well. So one of these is all connected. They're not necessarily sophisticated. They're not nation state level attacks. They can be done by multiple people. Again, with the enhancement of AI, these techniques are becoming more and more popular, and filling those gaps and making your staff aware of what can be done is really important. So what I'm going to do is explain what these mean in practice, and then we'll go into what you can actually do about it. So I'll give you just a brief case study just so we can go through it. So MGM Resorts, they're one of the largest hotel and casino companies in the world. They suffered one of the most high-profile breaches of the year. So how it started was within a 10-minute phone call. An attacker found the name of an MGM employee on LinkedIn. They called MGM's IT help desk, impersonated that employee, and convinced the support team to reset their account credentials. Now, there's no malware involved in that. There's no sophisticated hacking tools, just a very convincing conversation. So with those credentials, the attackers were able to move through MGM systems, eventually deploying ransomware that disrupted hotel operations, casino systems, and booking platforms for days across multiple resorts. The estimated cost of that was over $100 million. And the key lesson I want you to kind of take away from this one is that with just the right kind of approach, attackers can obviously take over quite easily. MGM had a security team, they had technology, but what they didn't do is have the staff awareness to identify this at the very beginning phase. So every person in your business is another person watching out for your security. It's much better having everyone looking out as opposed to just a small set of your IT security team or a trusted partner. All of your staff can be a benefit to you, and that's why it is so important to do appropriate training. So what can we do about it? And this is really the key thing that I want to talk to you guys about. So unfortunately, there is no one way to do it. There's no one silver bullet. There's two real core areas that we get asked, where do we start? And firstly, I always like to prefer staff. So technology can be hardened, systems can be patched, firewalls can be implemented, but people, the more training you give, the better they can actually help protect your own business as well. So that's the real key one there. So making sure they're looking for phishing, making sure they're understanding the risk. And the second, again, penetration testing and vulnerability scanning. So this is really where the technology kind of helps support the staff as well. So it's about giving your staff the right tools, the right systems in place, and then having those pen tests and vulnerabilities confirming what you've implemented. It helps keep your technical systems safe, stops attackers breaking in through, obviously, like we said in the first page, patches and everything else. Neither of these are kind of reserved for people with lots of money. You can do this on a well-constrained budget. You can do this with a well-proactive plan. And what you'll see when we go through them on each one, because I'll dive into each one, is kind of how these can be implemented and how they can start to work for you guys and how you can stay protected. So let me take you through each one. So we'll start with the phishing, just because that is on the left. So the importance of phishing. So another company, KnowBe4, which you may have heard of, who are one of the world's leading security awareness training providers, conducted a major benchmarking study across nearly 12 million users from over 55,000 organizations. So they measured the percentage of employees who would click on a simulated phishing email before receiving any training. And the result being 34.3% of people were clicking those links. So that's more than 1 in 3. Now, that's not a criticism of those people. Phishing emails, like I said, have become extraordinarily convincing. They look real, they feel urgent, they use your name, they seem personable, they reference your company, maybe technology that you're using, sometimes even colleagues, where you've got obviously information on LinkedIn. So modern attackers are very good at this. And again, with the help of AI, this is getting more advanced and is becoming quite a problem. But here's where the good news comes in. So after just 90 days of regular training and simulated phishing tests, that click rate actually dropped down to about 18.9%. So after 12 months of continuous training, again, it fell down to 4.6%. So an 86% improvement from over a third of your staff being at risk to fewer than 1 in 20. Now, that's a really fantastic kind of change and a really good way to see that your organization's culture and resilience to training really does protect you. So what actually good training does look like. So a lot of organizations do kind of annual e-learning modules. It's kind of a bit of a tick box. It works, it doesn't work, and some people kind of read through them, and if it's 5 minutes, they do go, start to speed through. So firstly, a good set of training does look like regular training, regular phishing, sorry. So not just once a year, doing it regularly, doing it ad hoc, not just getting to the month where everyone has recognized, oh, March is the time that we always get training, they're aware of it. So doing regular phishing attacks and simulations really do help. It's realistic. It helps people identify what the concerns are. And if anyone clicks, they get an immediate learning moment rather than a reprimand. So with anything to do with phishing training, there should never be any blame, should never really be any consequences. It should always be education. So people remember experiences far better than remembering sitting through a video. Secondly, short, frequent training sessions. So the research is clear that annual compliance training doesn't just change behavior. Short modules, 5 to 10 minutes once a month, keep security at the front of the mind. So it's kind of repetitive stuff. Same as what you're doing if you were learning a course or learning a module. That kind of smaller chunks, more bite-sized, digestible information does really stick a lot longer. And we've seen a better results when those staff have that kind of structure. Thirdly, the culture of reporting and not blaming. So a lot of people who accidentally click a link feel that they've done something wrong, and what you want is these staff actually talking to your IT team to raise that as soon as they can, to go, do you know what, hold my hands up, I think I've clicked a link, I just want to bring it to your attention, let it be investigated, let it be checked, and then let protection be put in place. Everyone should be rewarded for raising these concerns to your IT team, because it is a benefit. Burying your head in the sand leads to kind of maybe missed discoveries, and obviously that time frame allows an attacker to potentially start targeting further. And then fourth, and not last, certainly, executive involvement. So C-suite leaders are obviously the most targeted group. It could be the most important. There is actually a terminology for the C-suite, and it's called whaling as opposed to phishing. So, and in previous years, 62% of senior executives received targeted spear phishing attacks. So whaling is for the C-suite, spear phishing is defined as targeted. Just to kind of make those two things clear. So attackers know that compromising executives' email gives them enormous power. They can authorize payments, they can access sensitive data, they can impersonate someone who's got a lot more control. And your senior people, they need training too. They're just as important. Every staff member at every level needs to be involved in this process. And having that investment from that top level down really does help. So bottom line, 68% of all breaches involve the human element. So training your staff transforms your greatest vulnerability into your strongest line of defense. And having that many people look at your company or look after your company is definitely beneficial. So penetration testing versus vulnerability scanning. So let's talk a bit more around the technical side. Both are essential. They both obviously serve different purposes. And what I'll talk about is how these can actually be attributed into a testing program. So penetration testing, or also known as pen testing, is where you bring in a team of security consultants, such as ourselves, who manually attempt to break into your system. So that is looking at either your applications, your infrastructure, anything you've got publicly, internally, and it's just testing what you've implemented as well. So we think like attackers. We do it in a real world threat simulation, and it's looking at potentially chaining vulnerabilities together, not just kind of testing your technology, but also your people and processes too. So certainly when you're looking at just pen testing into the kind of red team stuff, you'd be looking at your SOC team, making sure that they're alerted and looking at what they're doing. And then obviously the goal is to find your weaknesses. It's to identify where an attacker could get in, give you that information as you see it early to allow you to then start patching those holes, making sure you're nice and secure as well. So a good analogy, I suppose, when we use in this industry, we use not a lot of analogies, and my favorite one is always using a house as an example. So it is kind of like hiring an expert locksmith just to test every door, window in your building and tell you which one is either broken into and what needs fixing and replacing. So penetration testing in general should happen at least annually. So NCSC, who are the kind of the provisioning body, they recommend doing it every year or after any significant change. So that is if you've got a web application, that's after a new branch release. If that's infrastructure, that's after a network change. If you've implemented new segmentation, or if you've implemented new servers, then those are kind of the key areas in which you want to do. A lot of people now are moving over to the cloud. So when you're doing that, that is also a primary example of when pen testing is really going to help. What you want to be doing here is looking at configurations, looking at the environment to make sure that what you've got is safe. So, and then vulnerability scanning. So this one is a little bit different. So it's more automated. It's tools that scan your system. They're done quick. They find kind of your baseline standards. So they are fantastic when you're scanning for kind of common vulnerabilities, patches, and they're really there to kind of help support what you need to be actioning at that point in time as well. So like I said, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's really kind of a lot of good low-hanging fruit. So I suppose when you think about analogies again, it's like kind of hiring nightly patrol. So someone who's going to roam the grounds, check your doors, windows, and just make sure they're locked. It doesn't test whether someone can pick the lock. It doesn't test whether someone can jimmy a window, because that's what obviously pen testing is for. But it makes sure that any obvious things aren't left open. So vulnerability scanning, again, they should be done ideally monthly, quarterly. They're there to really kind of stay on top of vulnerabilities. New ones are coming out all the time. The tooling that a lot of these providers have, kind of off-the-shelf products, they update their plugins on a regular basis. They will also, some instances, create a whole module for them. So, for example, when the Log4j vulnerability hit, there was a specific module for it. So they're there to kind of see what happens when your systems change. And ultimately, you kind of want to hybrid a bit of both. So the reason you need both is more to kind of catch different things. So scanning will give you the breadth and kind of the frequency and kind of fill in those gaps. And pen testing, gives you the depth and the context. So together they are quite a comprehensive picture of where you stand, and they can really start to complement each other as part of a really good, strong kind of testing program. So building a proactive testing program is incredibly important. So a lot of these things are kind of one of those things that people kind of don't really know necessarily where to start, how to implement. So I'll just walk you through kind of what a good program could look like, especially if you're starting out into this industry in terms of starting up with the cybersecurity protection against your organization. So good program would look something to like what we've got on the screen. So NCSC, which is obviously, again, it's the National Cybersecurity Centre, which is the government's authority on cybersecurity. They're very clear in their guidance. Organisations should conduct pen testing at least once a year, and following any significant change to their infrastructure or applications. That's on their website. So that's not necessarily a nice to have. It's a recognised best practice. It's embedded in the framework like PCI DSS, if you're going for ISO 27001. Frameworks that obviously you, as a company, and even your clients, if you have those, and regulators may already be asking you to align with. So here's how I would describe, or certainly what I recommend to our customers in terms of a well-structured program. So in month one, you start with a baseline pen test, especially if you've not done one before. So that's always a good starting point. Understand where your risks are. So you need to understand where you currently are in terms of security, and where you need to get to. So you kind of do your own little mini kind of gap analysis. So a comprehensive pen test will look at your network, your web applications, your kind of external attack surface, everything that kind of a real attacker would look at, especially when they're targeting you, and then providing you with a full report, which then helps give you a list of priorities in terms of remediation, a list of issues from obviously starting all the way from critical down to low and informational, along with a real good, clear kind of remediation guidance. So every vulnerability should have a description, a risk assessment, and your way to fix it. That's what a good report should continue with. Then I'm going to monthly and quarterly scanning. So you run these in between your pen tests. This is your kind of early warning system. It's there as a cost-effective measure. It runs regularly, and it flags new issues, patches that maybe you've missed out of a patching policy. They kind of come in between your full pen test. So think of it as kind of continuously monitoring as you go along in between those kind of more in-depth pen tests whilst you're remediating. And then obviously whether you're making any significant changes, launch a new system, major software upgrade, cloud migration, you obviously then would commission another pen test for that change. So this is something a lot of people overlook. Every change introduces a new risk. New website has a new attack surface. Anything that's public allows an attacker to identify you and potentially look at you as well. And a new integration has a new entry point. So testing after any changes is really how you make sure that you haven't opened up something new. And the reason a lot of people think a bit too late at this, and we see it quite frequently, new product gets launched and then it kind of gets released internally, and someone goes, did we get that tested before it's live? And someone goes, oops, no, we've got. And that's kind of where, when you're thinking about launching a product, if you bring and introduce a pen testing platform, or at least a proactive program like this, you start to introduce that into your own development cycle as well. And identifying that early means you've got plenty of time to test, make sure it's secure, fix, retest, and then launch. And then you know coming to market that you are not going to miss your deadline, but also that you're bringing a strong product. And then once you are done throughout those, you obviously then want full retesting as well in between those. So it's fantastic to get the testing done, but obviously actioning those after certainly the vulnerabilities is really important. So what you want to do is measure the improvement that you've had. So you set your priorities for the next 12 months. Depending on the risk profile, you can have your own risk register, which is highly recommended and certainly part of some of the bigger frameworks like ISO. And what you're looking for there is to show evidence that you have been actioning what you need to. And that's a really good kind of thing to think about in terms of demonstrating to the board as well, certainly for investment. And it really does help kind of top and tail those systems. Obviously, when you're doing retesting, critical systems, or sorry, critical vulnerabilities should really be done earliest on. We have a rough guidance. Everyone is different. Critical issues, we would probably say within 1 to 2 weeks. Highs within the first month. Medium, you could probably get away with 1 month to 3, and then anything low, you've kind of got a 3 to 6 month kind of remediation plan. Obviously, if you can do those in a much quicker time, if they're quick configuration changes, absolutely. The idea is to remediate everything that you physically can. There are instances where obviously you cannot always do that, and there are certain business cases, and that would always be taken into consideration with your own risk program as well. So if we bring this all together, so when you combine all of these, so staff training, phishing simulations, penetration testing, vulnerability scanning, it's fantastic to kind of put all these together. There's, like I said at the beginning, there is no one solution that will just work. So we want to talk about with the kind of the financial case. So because IBM's research provides a very clear, compelling number, especially on what you can see here. So again, organizations that have had incident response teams in place and regularly test their plans and systems experience average breach costs $3.26 million compared to the average of a $5.29 million. So for those without those measures, it's obviously a lot more expensive. The regulatory group, I believe it's FCA, do take into consideration a strong testing program. If you can evidence that you've had a pen test, you do regular VA scanning, that you action your everything with a strong remediation plan and update your risk register, they do take a little bit less of an impact in terms of a financial risk to the business. As long as you can evidence all of that, fines have been known to be reduced significantly. So as you can see, 58% reduction for those that have a strong testing program. And when you look at the cost, certainly with those numbers, especially when you're thinking about millions, that is a significant factor when you're looking to protect the business. So yes, it's a lot of investment up front, but the payment here is fantastic, especially on the outcome. So what you're actually gaining from a full program. So as you can see, you are reducing the risk. So training closes the human factor, testing closes the technical door, and the two most common entry points for attackers are addressed. So those are really important. You lower your financial impact even when something goes wrong. So because you detect it faster, you've prepared your response, the damage is contained, the IBM data is clear, fast detection saves a lot of money. Your staff become an asset rather than a liability, again, coming from that financial, that phishing training, security awareness. So trained employees who know what to look for, feel empowered to report it, become an early warning system. One email reported by one employee can stop a breach in its tracks, and all it does take is one employee. You can meet the expectations of regulators and clients. So whether it's GDPR, Cyber Essentials, PCI DSS, insurance, everyone should have cyber insurance. A well-documented proactive security testing program demonstrates not only due diligence, but a care about your data as well. So increasingly, clients, particularly enterprise clients, are asking for evidence of this before they'll do business with you. So you'll be frequently requested to provide evidence of your latest pen test. We do it when we're onboarding third parties, and everyone else should be doing it too. So this is kind of one of those to get ahead of it. When someone asks, you can give them a summary report, and then you consciously continuously get better. So the benefit of a program like this is that it compounds. So each round of testing, every training cycle, every round of scanning, as you're fixing, you're building knowledge, you're raising the bar. A business that's been doing this for 2 years is dramatically more resilient than one that started 6 months ago. So obviously getting that in there, continuous improvement, testing will show that as evidence as your risk goes down for the overall organization as well. So the question isn't whether you can afford to do it, it's based on numbers. The question is whether you can afford not to. So as you can see, and what we've talked about, there's a significant risk to not actually completing a full program. So next steps. So I wanted to kind of leave you with something a bit more practical, something you can actually action, and obviously what you can do in place to do this. So there's not a massive long list to think about. So the 4 specific areas that I think I'll let you guys to walk away with in terms of this webinar is first, run a baseline phishing test. So before you do anything else, your staff are kind of the key members in your organization. So you want to find out where you stand. So you can improve that, and you can actually track that very quickly with a standardized phishing test. So one baseline simulation tells you the percentage of your team who are currently at risk, gives you a clear starting point for your training program, and kind of helps starting you on that good process. Secondly, highly recommend booking a penetration test, especially if you've not had one in the last 12 months. And if you've made any significant changes to your system since the last one, it's definitely overdue. And this is important. It's a single investment you can do, understanding your true risk of your applications, your infrastructure, and then kind of start protecting yourself from that perspective as well. Third, definitely consider starting regular VA scanning to fill those gaps. So if you don't have this in place already, it's one of the most cost-effective things you can do. It will identify common vulnerabilities, missed patches, keeps you informed in between the full tests, and it catches kind of the basics, like I said, unpatched software, misconfigured systems, anything that could be used to harden and improve the security of what you control. And then fourth, obviously bringing your leadership team into this environment as well and getting them on board. So executives, like I said, they are the most targeted people. They are primed for phishing targets. If your board understands the risk, they can certainly help and then start building and supporting your own program, and then they can protect themselves and the business and their assets they can that they own. So 30-minute briefing with one of your leadership teams is absolutely worth it. There's certainly things there that can that could be brought to the table to improve everything. I would say that none of these really require a huge budget. Obviously, if you own a significant size infrastructure, penetration testing takes a little bit longer, but none of these would require significant investment upfront. So the phishing simulation, again, that's a really good, strong one. You can do that against a lot of staff. It's very cost effective. Regular VA scanning, the same. And briefing your leadership team is just a good conversation. So believe I've kind of gone through most of my content. I know that I think Craig was going to add some stuff towards the end, but I do have obviously time for any QAs, any questions. So I appreciate you kind of sitting here, listening, talking about phishing, stolen credentials. If you have any questions about any of what we discussed or just in general, please feel free to raise your hand and ask any questions. I will stop sharing just so I can see you guys actually on my main screen, just in case, because I don't want to miss anyone.
Thanks, Callum. I think there's a Q&A button in Teams actually, so if people want to pop some questions in there, if they do have them, yeah, they may not be able to raise their hands. I can't remember what permissions we've set them. So we have got some here. So I'll tell you what, if I ask them to you, Callum, and then I'll put you on the spot, and then you can answer if you know the answer, and if you don't, then we can go back to people. So I'm going to do them in reverse order. There you go. So we had this one from a client actually earlier this week. Asking us the question. They said, we're a small business, we've got under 30 staff. Are attackers really targeting companies our size, or is most of this stuff just aimed at the bigger organizations?
So the bigger organizations are certainly the juicier ones. However, everyone is a target. So in many ways, small businesses are a little bit more attractive, not less in terms of value, but attackers will think, or certainly have the imitation that smaller organizations typically have fewer security controls, less investment. They kind of maybe don't have the resource to support a strong security testing program, and as such, especially if you're a smaller kind of firm but you deal with sensitive data, size doesn't necessarily matter. It's what you hold and what you kind of value in terms of what you've got. So most attackers don't necessarily worry about size. Script kiddies, they don't care about size either. So again, what most attacks look at are data, what they could get the most value out of, what they could steal, because ultimately your cost is going to be just as expensive if you had a data breach as another size company. So size of company does not make a difference. We've had a law company of 10 people get ransomware, and they were tiny. So it does happen. Everyone is kind of
and the impact's the same, isn't it? Regardless of how big you are, the actual impact of that is just as horrendous if you're 5 people or 500 people. So
exactly,
it's not good.
No, and unfortunately, attackers do not have, as we've clearly seen, a moral compass. So
that's very
everyone is at risk, unfortunately, which can make some people nervous, but certainly, yeah, there's no real differentiator.
Brilliant. Appreciate that. Thank you. this one's actually a question of mine that came up whilst
Okay.
whilst you were talking, actually. So I thought I'll throw it in there.
Yeah.
We're obviously seeing with AI and all these things going on, there's a massive rise in kind of what's been termed in the industry as vibe coding, which is obviously,
Uh-huh.
you know, as you'll be aware, but people on the webinar may not be. What vibe coding is, people using kind of online tools. They can just type in what kind of app they want to build, and you know, AI will go off and do some clever stuff, and it will basically build your functional application. It's amazing. We're seeing a big rise in that, and a big rise of kind of that citizen developer, people within organizations building all these kind of tools out for the companies.
Mhm.
Does that, I'm going to assume that creates a bigger risk, but is that truly the case? Are you seeing that from your side?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a big section in kind of on AI, and I'll try not to kind of bore everyone with it because it's a massive interest of mine at the moment. So vibe coding is fantastic when you want to do something quickly, but it doesn't always mean it's secure. So the problem that we're seeing mostly is that a lot of people are just putting in what they need, and AI is the most helpful thing it'll do. It'll always agree with you, and it will generate what you're asking for, but it won't do it in a secure manner. And I think a lot of people, when you actually get down to what AI is built on, and it's a learning model, AI has learned from the internet. So it's got to have a resource from somewhere. It's obviously got to have a set of information. Now, the internet has not necessarily been the most secure thing in the world. So when it's learning off technologies and obviously previous experience where it's going out to the internet and learning off this stuff, absolutely it's introducing vulnerabilities. I built an AI or used AI to build a training web app for graduates. And I decided to build a simple web application, do what it did to. I lumped it onto an IIS server, and we've got 12 vulnerabilities with it. Now, that's because I didn't tell it to do it securely, and I could if I was thinking about it from that manner. But absolutely, with AI vibe coding, it's introducing risks. A lot of people we've seen will introduce AI into its development lifecycle. And one of our clients had it where they were having a bit of problem in a bug with the authentication module. So it asked the AI to go through the code and say, right, we're having a problem with this authentication module. Can you fix it? It fixed it. Absolutely. But it fixed it by disabling the authentication module. So again, the logic is not there. It didn't find the problem, fix it and keep it secure. It found a way around it because what the person asked was, can you fix the module? Well, the answer was yes, why delete it? So it will introduce security bypasses where you're not aware of. And if you've got developers that are not reading through the changes, there's a lot there that actually AI has introduced into the industry. And there is now a new methodology for it. So OWASP is the open web application kind of security project. They've got their own AI-based methodology now. It's become that significant that it needed its whole new thing. So when you're looking at LLMs, which is large language models, which every AI runs on, absolutely, there is significant risk. A lot of people are doing it. We test chatbots. We're getting those a lot come through at the moment. We can convince a chatbot to do something that it absolutely shouldn't. We had it talking to us like a pirate the other week. Client said it shouldn't do that. We agree, shouldn't be able to do that, and it did. So there's loads of things here, especially with AI, introducing a whole nother layer on both the defensive and attacking side. So in terms of staff implementing, or certainly organizations implementing AI into their systems, it's showing that there's another attack surface, which a lot of people aren't aware of. It's a fantastic buzzword at the moment, but it comes with its own architecture, security. And then on the flip side, attackers are using it. It's fantastic. It's generating really advanced phishing tests. It can now start to code malware on the fly. So it's evading certain systems by adapting. So yes, with the rise of vibe coding in terms of application development, we're certainly seeing a significant increase in vulnerabilities from a vibe coded app because it's not necessarily built with security in mind. On the flip side, we've also then seen vibe coding still covers AI introduction, where it's now allowing us access to stuff that it has access to, but doesn't tell the user. And we're also seeing attackers using it really, really advancedly as well. We're doing the same. It's fantastic. So yeah, programmers using
big
AI.
minefield.
It's a massive minefield. There's certainly a lot of information there around the AI LLM component that a lot of people aren't taking into consideration. So yeah.
So no. So yeah, reach out.
Do see a bigger risk, much bigger attack profile as well. I found a couple of websites with AI publicly, kind of like an assistant and a helper. One of them was to help me get a quote, and I then lied to it and told it it's wrong, and it gave me a cheaper quote. So again, workflow, logic, it's one of those things that kind of really doesn't doesn't kind of come into play either, and that's where really good, strong development comes in, and a good testing program, and actually an AI strategy is really highly recommended for that as well.
Brilliant, thank you. A couple more, and then I'll very quickly talk about our case study that we've done with you guys. One question: Do these kind of programs like this, the vulnerability scanning, all that kind of stuff, do they lower insurance premiums? Because we hear about that, or is that kind of a myth?
Yes, they do. So we've seen it. I think it's the FCA. So where you can demonstrate that you've got a really strong program and that you've done everything you physically can, they will take a more lenient action on you. If you've been a little bit reckless with your data, you've not secured it, you don't get regular testing, they will hit you pretty hard with a fine. And your cyber insurance will also hit you pretty hard. So anything like this will obviously lower your insurance premiums as well. It's the same as insuring your house, right? If you put more security in, you show that you've got cameras on the doors, you've got cameras protecting your garage, you would hope that your insurance company would lower the premiums. Same in testing. Everything, the more vigilant you can be, the more you can introduce in evidence, risk registers, compliance, cyber essentials, pen testing, security awareness training, all goes towards showing that you are a competent kind of protector of data. So, and they do take that into consideration quite significantly as well. Certainly in terms of premiums, but also in terms of fines as well.
Thanks, Callum. One more came through on email with which of the regulations actually require penetration testing? Because we hear about GDPR, Cyber Essentials, PCI DSS, all these different things that certain businesses have to comply to.
Yep.
Which of them actually sort of mandate them or require them to have a penetration test?
Well, the ones that are actually in there are certainly PCI DSS. However, they kind of come under their own set of requirements. So PCI DSS, for those that you're not aware, there's actually around 12 to 13 requirements for PCI, all varying all kind of covering various kind of components of what you need. And there's kind of two major sections. One is a web application section. If you ever handle card data, you have to have the web app pen tested, unless you use an iframe. And then the infrastructure. So that actually does require a pen test. There's 3 components to that under the PCI DSS guidance of 4.0. So you have to get an external pen test, an internal pen test, and segmentation testing. Those are the real big things for PCI DSS. In terms of ISO, so ISO strongly implies it as part of their risk management program. So again, this is a standardization, and ISO, although does not specifically dictate you must get this pen test every year, it will query you on, do you have a strong risk management program? As part of that, you can show, absolutely I do. Here's my pen testing program. Here's how often I get things done. And you will be asked as part of ISO to provide a pen test report. So we've got our own clients that we've also pen tested, and they go, can I have my report for my ISO compliance? And we pass that over as well. I suppose GDPR and kind of the other ones like Cyber Essentials. So GDPR doesn't necessarily mandate pen testing specifically. It does require you to demonstrate more kind of the technical and organizational measures. So they cited it like a lack of testing in enforcement decisions. If you're unsure, the best thing to do is kind of start to ask your legal team, compliance team. You should have a dedicated kind of person within your organization. Alternatively, you can speak to us and yourself, Craig. We can guide you on what necessarily does need doing. If you don't need pen testing and it's not a requirement, then obviously we won't push you down that route. But where we do think it would be beneficial, we certainly would advise. Unfortunately, more regulators come out, more compliance standards come out all the time, and it does get confusing. Like I said, best thing to do is just come and ask, and we'll give you the right answer.
Fantastic. Thanks, Callum. Appreciate that. Brilliant. Well, I just want to take literally 2 or 3 minutes really quickly to just talk through kind of how we've worked with DigitalXRAID on kind of one of our successful projects that we've been running with them that's still ongoing actually. So we are working with a local bus company. Those of you that are local to the Reading area will know them well. They're called Reading Buses. They are the unitary bus company. They look after buses in Reading, Bracknell, Slough, quite basically across the Thames Valley and Newbury as well. We won the contract to support them just over a year ago, and as part and parcel of that, once we came in, we realised pretty quickly that there were some improvements basically that could be made with security, and thankfully their IT manager there is very open and switched on and was actually very keen to understand what the gaps were. So we worked with DigitalXRAID to put together a pretty comprehensive program which involves monthly vulnerability scanning. So we're continually finding issues that might exist within the network, and I mean they're relatively big. They've got 3 or 4 sites. They've got quite a number of machines. So there are things that crop up from time to time. So we have this regular monthly scan that picks those things up. They have external scans on their web applications because they have applications for things like digital ticketing where you can go on and buy your bus tickets, your bus cards. They've got schedule sites, all these things. So all of this stuff has been tested as well. Then we've arranged kind of an annual tabletop exercise, which I think is a really useful thing actually, which essentially pulls all the stakeholders together and actually looks at things like the disaster recovery plan. So it goes wider than just IT, but actually looking at like, okay, let's role play a disaster. Let's figure out if this happened, what would you do? Okay, hang on a minute. Your disaster recovery plan was on the server and you can't get to that now. Who's got a copy of that? Highlighting all of these things that you just wouldn't think about necessarily until you have a disaster. So role playing that through to then strengthen the plans. And then an annual penetration test to actually then make sure that kind of all of those vulnerabilities and things that might have been found that have then been remediated, are actually protected against, and just seeing what is accessible and what can be hacked. So I think we're 10 months into that program now. We've got 2 months left to go. We're already on the plans here for kind of a renewal of that, and just keeping that going as a kind of a rolling service, because the value is clearly there for them in terms of how they can see visibility. And I think that's the key thing. One of the questions we do get asked regularly is, as our IT, do you guys kind of not just do this? And we do to an extent. Obviously, we push out security and we patch machines and we put in place all the key bits and pieces. We see things like vulnerability testing as a really important piece of kind of check and balance. So actually, even if we could do this ourselves, I wouldn't want to, because I feel like it's marking our own homework, and that kind of opens up a potential for us to cheat essentially, and we wouldn't want to do that. So vulnerability test really kind of helps to identify things that might be there. And I can say from experience, again, of having done these internally, that even with everything patched up to date as best as you think they are, there will be something that you just didn't know about, or there'll be a printer that someone's put on the network that's got a vulnerability, or there'll be a new VoIP phone and there's something going on with that. So this stuff kind of extends further beyond the reach of just what we can regularly do with software, and I think it's a really important thing that as businesses mature and they're looking at how they control their risks, I think this program that Callum was talking about today and what he's put together is a really important thing for people to consider. So in terms of next steps on how you can look at this, if you want to find out more, you can reach out to Callum, not Callum from DigitalXRAID, although you can, there's no problem. I'm sure he'll direct you back to us. But there is also Callum with us, Callum Hurst. I think he's on the webinar, but he's hiding in the background, which is probably the best idea. But Callum, if you're a OneFix client, he's your account manager. If you're not a OneFix client and you'd like to find out more, get in contact with us. You can find me on LinkedIn, Craig Atkins. You can find us on the web, one-fix.com or one-fix.com, whichever way you want to call it. Give us a shout. We'll happily come and have a chat with you, understand what you might need to do, and then pretty quickly we will loop in people like Callum from DigitalXRAID, and we'll work together on a program there. And it truly is kind of a partnership. We're not looking to take this sort of stuff in-house as our own project. We would much rather work with the security experts, people that do this day in, day out. They are much better placed at this than we are. So Callum, DigitalXRAID, Callum, sorry, because we've got 2 on the call. Callum, I really appreciate your time today and sharing your expertise with everybody on the webinar. Thanks for taking time to answer all the questions, and everybody, also thank you all for your time. Appreciate you giving up the best part of 50 minutes of your day so far. Really appreciate that. Please do reach out. I'll say to Callum on our team, connect with Callum from DigitalXRAID on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's all stay in touch. We really appreciate your time and hope to see you on the next webinar we do very soon. Thank you.